Hello and a warm welcome to your email and texting campaign training video. My name is Johnny Richardson. I'm part of the team at Gecko and it's my pleasure to run you through this today. Now before we get any further, it's worth pointing out that this is training which is very much designed for those of you who are wanting to learn everything there is about Gecko. Now it may be that you just love it and you can't get enough of it. It's more likely that you're new to the system, you have a brand new account and you're tasked with setting this up, or that you're jumping into that role after someone else has moved on. But either way, we're going to go through a very comprehensive overview. We'll be learning how we can create new campaigns, how we can create and manage our sending channels, users, integrations, settings, template tags, reporting, pretty much everything involved with the act of sending emails or texts in Gecko in longer form. If you are coming into an account which is already running perfectly fine, thank you very much. Everything's already set up and all you want to do is to just piggyback off of that. You want to import your contacts, send them a message, thank you very much. There's a much better guide for you. There's the Getting Started guide, which you can click below, which will teach you everything you need to know in a much quicker way. That said, if you do want to stick around because you're interested or a little bit curious, then absolutely welcome and wonderful to have you here. Now, the first things to point out when we jump into the Gecko platform, once you first logged in, is that you'll be confronted with a screen that looks a little bit like this. And it's important to point out that most of the navigation is done with this bar here on the left-hand side. And it contains everything you'd expect and it's really clearly labeled. All of our contacts are visible in the contact section. We'll be able to view all of the responses to our forms in the responses section. We'll see a list of every single email and text we've ever sent and the ability to actually read those messages right here from the messages pane. We've also got the ability to view settings. We're going to deep dive into that later, where we manage our events, forms, and crucially for us, our mass text and emailing campaign broadcasts and landing pages. As well as noting that this can be collapsed or expanded at will, in the top right hand corner you can click your name and this gives you the options to my two of my favorite things in Gecko, one of which is the ability to go to the Gecko Academy, which is a super helpful resource in answering any questions. It breaks it down by a product basis, but you've also got a handy search bar here if you're looking for something in particular. Now Gecko only works in higher ed. We have 10+ years experience, so you can contact us. We have quite good knowledge of different problems, so if you've encountered something before, we've almost certainly been through it with another institution. So let us know if you need anything. We love it when people come to us and say, hey, this is the idea that we have, how would we best do this, or what do you think would be the best approach with this? Just reach out to us and send us gifts. We like gifts. This engine runs on gifts, so yeah, send us those because they make us smile. Here too you can access the service status, any product updates, and access things like your security preferences or your user settings, which can be super useful in a number of different ways, as we'll get into. Okay, so throughout the course of this video then, we want to do something quite simple on the face of it. We have a group of students, or we don't, but we will be getting one shortly. We want to send them a particular email and a text message in this example, so let's go about getting that all set up. And I've actually already clicked to where we need to be to begin with, and that's in the settings section here. Now, to build and manage our SMS and email templates, we have to go to Settings, Email, and SMS Templates. And here we'll see a list of all of our pre-made templates. We can sort them by category or type, which is very easy to do, and any existing template, you'll be pleased to know, can be cloned. So if there's a master template you want to set up with all of the branding and people just tweak the body, create that first and then have everyone just sit back and enjoy it by cloning it in the future. For our example though, let's imagine we don't have anything to clone. Let's start from scratch, and the good thing about Gecko is the call to action is always in the same place, which is the top right hand corner. So let's click New Template together. Here we tell Gecko what type of message we want to build. So for us in this video, we're going to go through both email and text messages because I want to be sending out both types of communication, because why the heck not? Choose the type of email we want to create, so basic, drag and drop, or import HTML. Now, this is a bit of a misnomer because both drag and drop and basic editor both support the ability to import HTML as well, but we're going to be focusing on the drag and drop specifically because this is something unique to those of you like you who have the mass emailing and texting, and it's a bit nicer, a bit shinier, and a bit fancier. We then need to, crucially, give our email template an internal name. So we'll call this the Academy Broadcasts email. I'm not great with the names. For the subject line though, we can do some cool things. We can throw in emojis. We can also personalize this as well. And we're jumping ahead a little bit. I'll teach you how to do this, but we can pull in dynamically the name of the student or any other information for that matter that we have on them. Sign up to orientation, we'll say. When you're ready to progress to building it, just go ahead and hit next. And you can see the template has been saved. We're creating it and we can go ahead and edit it. Now, if you've used a drag and drop email builder before, awesome. This is a drag and drop email builder, so you'll be well versed with it. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure, it's really simple. Imagine it's almost like Lego, right? You've got different rows, and actually it's nothing like Lego. You have different rows effectively, and you can choose what type of content lives on those rows. So if we had a split and we wanted a row with 50-50, and on one side we wanted a picture, and on the other side we wanted a video, we could add a row that looked like that, and then we could go to the content tab and we could say, on the left hand side we want a picture, and on the right hand side we want there to be a video. It's very, very easy to kind of manage. Let's get this looking nice and pretty-ish in a relatively short space of time. I'm going to click on a pre-built kind of image there, and I can choose to change this image to anything in my library. Ignore the picture of the aardvark. We could insert a gecko logo. We could choose to do a bunch of things to make this look nice and pretty, and we can currently see it's a white image on a white background, and you can see we're able to pretty easily change how that looks. This is a content text type, which is down here by default. Just clicking on it gives you a ton of options in terms of formatting and styling, and also access to mail merge tags, which are really important within Gecko parlance. These are tags which can dynamically be pulled in, and you're able to use them to tell Gecko what information you want to pull into the email. So instead of saying main heading, we could say hi and then the student name, for example, which is going to be different for each student. So we can say contact first name, and there we have the tag to use for dynamically pulling in the student's first name. Very, very simple to do. Now, it's worth saying as well, with the images in particular, we support a library of over 500,000 stock images, which is where the aardvark came from originally, that you're able to use in these, and there's a ton of other bits of capability and functionality here. But let's keep this super basic. Let's imagine this is the email that students have been dreaming of, and we're pretty much ready to get this sent. Now, once you have saved your email, there are a few unique characteristics of the email that it's worth pointing out. Firstly, you have the ability to clone this, to download the HTML, and you also have the ability to send a test email by default to yourself, to your email address, which is really good. It'll give you an idea of stylistically how things look. The only thing to note with that is, because you're sending it to just an email address as opposed to a contact on the system, it means that if you are using these tags, don't panic if a name doesn't appear, because you're not sending it to a contact. Gecko has no reference point for any mail merge tags that you choose to add. Additionally, though, if you wanted to just have a really quick idea and glance at how this appears on email or text messages, you can click preview and view preview mode, and here you get a very basic representation of what this will look like to users on desktop or mobile devices. Okay, let's go ahead and build our SMS template, which is, as you can imagine, far easier because there's way less functionality that you have with text messages. Give it an internal name, so we'll call this the Gecko Academy Broadcast SMS, and go ahead and click next. Here you have the ability to add your message, so we could say anything we wanted. We could say hi. And again, it looks ever so slightly different for the mail merge tags here. We have this very easy to understand template tag builder. We can tell Gecko where we want to pull the information from. So in this case, from a contact, and specifically we want the contact's name. But if we scroll down, we can see a bunch of other things like contact records, telephone number, their level of study, program of interest that we could dynamically pull in. But let's say we want their name, and specifically the first name. We'll put a space there as well. Here is your very first SMS from Gecko. Now, a couple of things to point out here. One is that there is a character limit well, I say character limit, it's something like 1,600 characters, I believe, is the actual limit, which is a novel by text message standards. You are completely able to go over 160. It will appear as one message to the student. Long gone are the days where you get 160 characters at a time from your phone provider. But we just leave this character counter here just as a way of visualizing how many text messages are actually going to be sent out, even if the recipient's phone stitches things together. Now, when we're sending emails or text, it kind of opens up the avenue of consents, which is a really important topic. It's a big topic. It's not one that we're going to go into the weeds of on this particular video. We do down below have a very good article which is going to break down precisely how they work in Gecko. For the long and the short of it is, though, if you've read the eagle-eyed of you who have read the description text here will see, we do recommend say stop or advising the contact that if they reply with any of these keywords, it's going to opt them out, which effectively is what happens. It'll mean that they can't receive any future messages from that particular number in the future. But again, check the guide out below if you're wanting to learn more. Here is my very first message. And let's go ahead and save this template. Okay, so let's have a really quick review of what we've done. Before we do that though, let's point out that any template you can go back in and you can rename just by heading to the settings tab just up at the top here. So it's it's easy to manage and change things if we choose to alter the subject line in the future. Okay, so as a quick review, we have built our two messages. We've been introduced to the idea of contact mail merge tags, and now we're ready to start building the means to send these messages. So we have our templates, but we don't yet have a telephone number to send our text message. We have our email, but we don't yet have an email address set up to send our email. So let's fix that. Let's start with email because we built our template first. So we can choose and build an email sender in Gecko by going to settings and going to verified senders and domains right here. Here you'll see a list of all of your available senders, and to set one of these up, it's easy. Just click new sender in the top right hand corner, write in the name of your sender as you want it to appear, so who is the person who's sending this email address, and then add in their email address right here. Now, as soon as I hit save, what's going to happen is it's going to send an email to this actual email address from Amazon Web Services. If this person then, the owner of the inbox, goes into the email, they click the link in the email, it'll redirect them to Gecko. Once they log into Gecko, this email sender will be marked as verified in the system, which means we can start sending emails out from this email address, or what looks like this email address. It'll be a spoofed email address in Gecko immediately. There's no limit to the number of senders you can create, and it's very easy to do. Now, one of the limitations of that, and those of you who are familiar with this kind of technology will know, if we're trying to send an email to a real @GeckoEngage email address from a spoofed @GeckoEngage email address, the real GeckoEngage email address network will recognize the spoofed email address and they'll think, this is a little bit, this doesn't look great, this looks a bit suspicious, a bit suspect, and as such it's more likely if you're emailing internal or current students to be marked as spam. For that reason, you have the ability to set up a domain in Gecko, which is basically a way of verifying and adding a ton more securities to your spoofing. So if we verify a domain, in this case any email address that ends with geckoengage.com, we can afford things like DKIM verification, mail from, SPF as well, which basically gives the best protections that we can that this email will be received by the student. It also has the added bonus that you can just create any email addresses on the fly that end with this suffix. So for example, if we wanted to create a new sender and we wanted to have the recipient name be Academy and we wanted the email address to be academy@GeckoEngage, this isn't an email address that exists, but because we verified our domain, because we have that GeckoEngage email address, which is verified, the domain, sorry, it means this email address is instantly going to be ready. I don't need to worry about clicking a link or logging into Gecko, and I can start sending emails from this pretend completely made up email right away. So that's our email address. We now have an email address to send our email template from. Let's get a telephone number to start sending our text message. And this again is really simple. It's done in settings and it's managed by going to VoIP numbers. And here, if we click in the top right hand corner, we can choose to purchase or procure a brand new number. Choose purchase number. We want to give this an internal name. Choose the region of this number. So where would you like this to look as if the telephone number originates? And you can filter this down with an area code. Choose the type of number you want, but crucially for us, we want to change the capability of this to not just being voice only. We want it to be able to send SMS messages. Go ahead and hit search. We use Twilio for our text messages, and you can choose a number that looks good to you. So we'll choose this one right here, Selkirk, Scotland, very local to Edinburgh. So let's go for that and click OK. And once we've done that, we now have our broadcast number that we can start sending text messages from as well. Now, it's worth pointing out here, just as an aside, if you're a user and you have Gecko Chat, then you have the ability to link both of your accounts together, enabling you to do two-way texting. By default, the number that we've just purchased right here will support outgoing SMS messages, and we'll be sending those to students, but it won't allow the message to come into the contact record, and it won't recognize who's responding to the message. So it's purely one way. If you have a Gecko Chat account, you can create an SMS channel that does allow for that two-way communication. So you can send a mass broadcast to 10,000 students. If 300 of them respond, it starts a conversation which can either be picked up by your agents or by your chatbot. There's again a video down below about two-way texting if you want to learn a little bit more. Okay, really quick recap. We've built our collateral that we want to send out, the email and the SMS templates. We now have an email address to send our email, and we have a VoIP telephone number to start texting out our SMS. What do we do now? We need to build our campaign, and we can do this by going to broadcasts on the left-hand nav bar here. Now here we'll see a table of all of our broadcasts. You can search it using the quick search bar. We can filter it by broadcast type, whether it's email or SMS, and also whether or not it's active or complete, or we can create a brand new broadcast just by clicking new broadcast at the top here. Let's go ahead and give our broadcast a brand new name. So we'll say Academy Broadcast, and I spelt it right for a change. We can choose to add a bit of description text. This is internal only, and it's a useful way of being able to denote for colleagues what this is about or tracking in the future. You then tell Gecko what type of message we send immediately. Now, as we'll see, we're actually going to chain both of these together so that we're able to send an email and a text out immediately. But you have to choose one of these to begin with. So we'll say email here, and you have to then choose which email address we're sending it from. And remember, we just verified a sender. So we'll use our new email address. We then choose the email template, and we can choose our broadcast email or any other template, and you can actually preview this in line. You can see the subject line, and we can make any changes that we need to by clicking up here. Again, for the consents, you can tell Gecko honor any consent values that a student has. So if they've opted out, don't let them receive it. But we can also tell Gecko we don't care. We want everyone on this list or in this particular cohort to receive the email. Crucially then, we get down to this final section where we have three choices as to what type or flavor of broadcast we're wanting to run. Do we want to set this up, get everything ready, and then press the launch button and have this run immediately? Do we want to set this up, get everything ready, but tell Gecko, I'm going to be away next week, but I don't want to have to be in the office to press the button, so wait until this date and this time and then run? Or do we run this as a campaign? Is this something that should start at this particular time, finish at this other specified time in the future, and anyone who meets the conditions that we're about to set in the broadcast at any time, add them into the campaign and send them a message? We're going to go for a run now, because we don't have 6 months to run this as a campaign. I'm sure you wouldn't appreciate a video that long, but they're all very easy to set up, and outside of that initial choice, everything else is going to look exactly the same in the system. So let's go ahead and click next. Now, again, one of the lovely sort of fail-safes with Gecko is if you really make a meal of it and you think, oh my goodness, it was supposed to be a text message, not an email, you can click settings and you can go right back and you can change that. You're able to do that at almost any time, so you definitely have that capability. Crucially though, we're on the select contacts page, and here we're basically, Gecko's getting ready to choose which contacts to send to, and we need to tell Gecko of all of the contacts on the system, who should we include in this broadcast? And this brings us to an interesting point. If this is a brand new account, you're new to Gecko, it's likely you might not have anyone on your account. So we're going to go through one of the most popular ways of adding contacts to the account, which is importing via a CSV file. But I just wanted to show you quickly, for the conditions, you can base this off of anything. If you have existing contacts, you could say, for example, I want anyone whose last SMS was received at a certain time, or whose nationality or program of interest is equal to these things. You can also predicate this off of any responses to forms, any events they've attended or not attended, and also their status in any other broadcast. So were they marked as failed? Were they complete in a previous broadcast? There's a lot of flexibility, and we'll be seeing how we can chain these together. But first, let's go ahead and import some contacts into the system so that we can specifically target them with this broadcast. Now I'm going to show you my sample import, which is set up right here. We have 3 completely fictitious students. Well, they're not. The first one isn't fictitious because I'm real, or at least I think I am. And so we've got, I'm not really sure where I was going with that, but we have details crucially here and a bunch of different information. Now Gecko is very flexible. It really doesn't matter. We don't want you to waste time formatting your spreadsheet to try and crowbar it into a way that Gecko understands. And as such, for example, if you have last name, comma, first, or first space last, or as I have first and last as separate columns, all of those will work, and as we'll see shortly. But we can see we're going to be importing information into the first name field, last name, email, dial code, telephone, nationality, program of interest, and so on. The important thing to note is that if you're importing, this can be done through your integration directly, as we'll see, but I'm going to be importing this as a spreadsheet, so a CSV file, so make sure you have that downloaded. Now, in Gecko, to upload this and to import these students, we go to Settings, Import Data. In the top right hand corner, we're going to click New Import, and we're going to tell Gecko it's a file import. But just quickly to point out, this is a test account. I've got a ton of other integrations with CRM systems. For a lot of them, you have the ability to directly import query and import contacts via the API. So check out the integrations page to learn a little bit more, on the Academy that is, to learn a little bit more about that. But for us, let's choose a file import. We're going to give this a name, so we'll call this the Academy Broadcast Import. We'll tell Gecko it's a one-off, that we do support recurring exports from SFTP servers as well. We'll say it's a one-off import and it's a list of contacts we're importing. Here's the file to upload. Let's upload it right now. Okay, a few things to point out here. Underneath the title of our import, which we can change, we can choose to skip the first row, which basically means in the context of our import, we have nothing. We have no real student data in this first row. It's just purely headers. So in this case, we would want to skip the first row because there isn't anyone there. But if your data set launches straight into contacts, just choose to ignore that. So we're including that first student and not exempting them because they happen to be at the front of the queue. We then have a very curious game to play where we're mapping the values in the different rows and columns, the columns I should say, on the spreadsheet to different parts of the student contact record. So for example, we're saying in column 2, which has the values Johnny, Gecko, a little preview here, and Engage, and if we go back to our spreadsheet, Johnny, Gecko, and Engage in this first column, these are all first names. So as such, I want to import this into the Gecko full name, but specifically the first name field. And we can see here we get a ton of those different formats we were talking about. So my spreadsheet happens to be first, but yours could be in a completely different way and it could equally work as well. We can also choose to pull into the first name and then last name field. And for the email, that's going to go to the email field. Now, there's a couple of things. I want to just take a really brief tangent here, if we haven't been on enough tangents already, to talk about contact fields. These are the fields which we're going to be importing into. They're the things which define the student and the contact record themselves, and they can be managed or changed by any admins at any time by going to Settings and Contact Fields. And Gecko comes with a couple of hard-coded fields which are always there, as you'd imagine, for any system. So full name, email address, telephone, preferred language, and organization. But everything else we see here are things that I have built, I've customized. And you can build them by clicking New Contact field in the top right-hand corner. You can give them a name for whatever attribute. You can tell Gecko what type of data this field should expect. So is it a text single line that accepts just a string? Do we want a pick list that uses single or multiple choices like a radio choice, checkbox, or drop-down? And if so, what options template should we use? And options templates, going on a tangent from a tangent, can be managed in Settings Field Options, where we can create wonderful lists with hundreds or thousands of different options, and these can be manually typed out. And we support both display values and GUIDs that your CRM would expect. You can choose to copy and paste them directly into Gecko, and you've also got the ability to import them from either a text file or directly from your CRM if you have your integration set up. All that said, it means that we have the ability to then say, I want to import nationality into the nationality contact field, program of interest into program of interest, year of entry into year of entry, and with telephone, I'm going to be importing this into the telephone field. Now with telephone, like name, you get a few different formatting options, and I'm going to say this is the bulk of the number, but if we look here, this seems to be the international dial code. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about this, which is going to be useful for those of you who are texting in Gecko. Let's go back to our spreadsheet here. So we can see we've got 3 different students and the same telephone number here because I'm lazy and I don't know any other numbers other than my own, but we have different dial codes. Now I can see this student is from the United Kingdom, and I've actually set up the account ahead of time to tell Gecko in Settings, Account Settings, that there should be a default country code applied to any telephone number that comes into the system. Which basically means, because I haven't specified a dial code, because this cell is blank, and it's mapped to the telephone dial code field here, because it's blank, automatically affix the UK dial code, which is +44. And any other student, so if you're planning on only messaging domestic students with the same dial code as you, particularly in the States we see this, you can just set this to US, only map the main telephone number and not have to worry at all about dial codes. For those of you wanting to do more international recruitment, just make sure you have a dial code setting set up. And basically, where a dial code here is specified, it means that it'll overwrite that +44. So we should see that the American +1 formatting is applied to our student from the United States, and for our student in the Netherlands, they are going to get the +31 affixed to their number as they'd expect. Okay, cool. We're finished now with our import. Everything's set up. Let's go ahead and click Finish Import, and we should see some interesting things happen. Firstly, we've only imported 2 of the 3 students because one of the students happened to have already existed on the system. We can see Johnny Richardson, who was imported into the system, was created actually in January early this year. So we haven't created a duplicate, instead we've merged it into the same contact record. But we have created these 2 new students, they've been imported. Okay, import done. Now we've gone on a bit of a kind of whirlwind adventure with contacts and fields and all sorts. Let's go back to our broadcast. I'm just going to refresh the page quickly, and let's now tell Gecko that we are, of all of the contacts on our account, we're only interested in those who were part of an import that equaled the Academy broadcast import. And if we hit the refresh icon, we can see we've now refined our results down to just 3 contacts, the 3 people on our list. And again, this can be added to, you can use conditional logic to say, I want anyone who was part of this import and their nationality was equal to United States, for example, and we could hit refresh, and that further refines our queries. Or we could change it to and/or logic and potentially further grow this out. It's entirely up to you how you want to set these up, and you can use very complex queries. Once you're ready though and you're happy with your list, go ahead and click Next. And this brings you to the Workflows section, which is a really useful tab for automating what happens next. So in our example here, we're going to be sending them an email immediately. And a good workflow to potentially set up might be by saying if the email fails, maybe because the student gave us an incorrect email address, maybe what we want to do is send a text message right away saying, hey, we tried emailing you just now. Sadly, it didn't go through, but can you update your email address here so we can have the correct email in the future? And we could set that up very easily in Gecko. Workflows basically work by having a condition which says these are the things that need to happen. If they're left blank, it'll happen for every single student every single time. And then, if those conditions are met, at this time, do these things. So in our example, we could say if the condition is that the outcome of the message is equal to failed. So if that email failed because it's an invalid email address, then immediately what we would like to do is send a text message to the student. And the message we want to send is this one, which is loading. And there we are. So it's not a very useful message in this context, but hey, we'll roll with it. You can choose which telephone number to message. And a useful thing to note about that is that going back to the contact fields, you can create multiple telephone fields that a student might have: their cell number, their home number, their parent's number. So if you wanted to target a student's parents, you could say, it's the parent number I want to text on this particular occasion. You choose the telephone number to send this from and which number you want to message. And again, you can choose whether or not you want to ignore consents. So very easy to manage. We can add as many workflows as you want. They can have weird and wonderful logic. You can create very interesting campaigns based on the action. So did a student open it? Okay, great. If they opened it, then what we want to do is let's impart a delay of maybe 5 days. And after 5 days, we're going to follow up with another email because we know that they were a bit more engaged. If they clicked, maybe we assign a label to the contact. And that label is going to be used in our call campaign to denote the fact that they clicked into that email, that they're that bit more ready to attend an open day or an open house or whatever it may be. There's a lot of flexibility and malleability with workflows. I just wanted to give you an idea of how they can work. And once you have created them, you can clone them by clicking the clone button and click delete to remove them at any time. Okay, we then get to quite frankly the scariest thing in all of Gecko, which is the launch button. And this isn't so bad when it's 3 contacts and I know that they're all me that are going to receive it, but you effectively get a run through that says we're going to email X many people using this email and from this number. And this is usually where you're a bit blasé and you say, yep, let's start this. But then you come to this, which is just cruel, infinitely cruel of us to say, this is not reversible. You're about to email this many people, and that's a much scarier number when it's about 6,000 or 7,000. This is usually where you go back and you double check everything rightly to make sure that we've definitely got the right sender, definitely got the right template, and so on. And once you've double checked that it's the right cohort as well, we can choose to start that broadcast, which is going to launch. The broadcast is now complete as that's instantaneous, and we've got all 3 of those students receiving that message hopefully very, very shortly. I've actually received 3 emails just now. I'm going to drag my email down from a different screen and we can see that email has come through and it's pulling in the name of the student in both the subject line, and here we can see that sender that we were spoofing. This is not, again, not a real email address, but we're making it look as if it is, and there's the sender name too. So a lot of really interesting things you can do. Now that we've completed our broadcast, let's talk a little bit about how we can analyze its success. And there's a few different ways of doing this from a reporting perspective. Firstly, the eagle-eyed of you will have noticed there's a stats tab right here. And this will give us the ability to view over any date range how many messages have been sent, how many have been opened, what the open rate is. In fact, we can see one email has already been opened. We opened it just there on the other screen, which means 33% of the emails sent currently have been opened. There's been a 0% click-through rate, and we can view that information. We can see the delivered and message statuses, the click analysis, the email platform that's used, and even locational information at the bottom there. In addition to that, you have the ability to create dashboards within Gecko at any time by going to dashboards, which give you a little bit more granular insight into those stats. And if you plan on using the same email template across multiple sources, like multiple broadcasts, because it's quite a generic template, you can actually view those message stats from the message template page itself by going to settings, email and SMS templates, clicking into your template, and then clicking the stats section just there. So that's it. It's very quick to get up and running with creating the broadcast. And as a quick recap, we've done a lot in a very short space of time. You've been introduced to a ton of concepts, so really well done for keeping up to date. We've talked about building email and SMS templates, building the senders, the email address and the VoIP number to send those. We've imported contacts. We've touched on mail merge template tags. We've talked about the contact fields, field options lists that those templates, that those pages can use and those tags can use. We've built a broadcast. We've imported students. We've mapped everything. We've set up workflows. We've analyzed the stats. And that was all done very, very quickly. I want to talk about some useful system settings, but before we do, I also wanted to let you know about landing pages, because again, this is something nice and unique to you as email and mass text users. The idea of a landing page is it gives you the ability to have a very personalized page which can be dynamically generated and dynamically personalized to the student who's using it. It enables you to share forms, maps, and brand this in whatever way you want, which is a nice alternative to having to wait for IT to build a particular page if you need a web page very quickly. These can be managed by going to landing pages, clicking new landing pages, and then really customizing it in whatever way you want and being able to publish it. Now, again, in the interest of time, we've got a further article down below that'll go through the minutiae of building these and also personalizing these, so that if we send the same landing page link to 5 different students, that student, each of those 5 students is going to get a very different looking page because it'll be branded to them. Now let's go through some of the really useful system settings. It may be that you've been tasked again with getting the contact fields ready, the email and VoIP senders, and also you've been tasked with adding other users, getting the integration ready, so it's worth pointing out and talking about those things too. You're free at any time to create users by going to Settings and Users. And you'll see a list of all of your available users. These can be filtered by statuses or by user groups. And you're able to create a new user by clicking New User in the top right hand corner at any point. Add the name of the user that you're looking to add and their email address to send their invite to, and then choose which organization they belong to, which user group. And in Gecko parlance, that effectively is what permissions do they have. And this is governed by going to user groups. There are a couple of pre-built groups, but the nice thing that hopefully gets you, maybe not excited is maybe not the right word, but is an interesting thing to know, you have granular control over what your user group is able to do. So for example, if you're a marketing team who own this, you maybe want to create a group for admissions to enable them to view and update broadcasts, but you don't want them creating new ones. You want them to view and maybe update and create contacts, but not delete them. You do definitely want to allow them to send messages, but you don't want to allow them to export information. But they are going to need to import users and contacts, so that they're able to send messages to them. So you have full granular control over what people are able to do in the system, which is super useful. And again, those different user groups that are there are then pulled into this field when you choose and say, this particular person I'm adding, this is the user group they belong to. Once you're ready, go ahead and hit Save Changes. It sends an email out to whichever email address you've entered in here. They then need only follow the link there, log in, set a password, and they are good to go in using the system. The final thing to draw attention to in today's training session is the integration side of things. We've been quite sparse on the detail there, and the reason for that is that Gecko covers such an unbelievably large amount of integrations. A lot of these are very in-depth integrations where we could honestly talk for hours about each of them, and as I don't know what integration you're using, it's hard to translate that into a video, and as such we have a link to all of our integrations below, teaching you how the integration looks on both sides, from sending email email and text message perspective, how the mapping looks, how that all works, and how you can get going very, very quickly with it indeed. But all of those integrations are managed in settings and integrations. In summary, we've learned a lot. We've learned how to send out messages, how we can create our templates and our collateral, how we can build our broadcasts for the future, and how we can use workflows to optimize a lot of the fails and a lot of the user-driven behaviors in really effective ways. Thank you ever so much for watching, and we're really excited to see how you find Promote.